So it looks like we're all here, so if we want to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the Owner Series webinar, Blueprint for Building a Customer-Centric Culture. This is a subject that is very special to us here at Guild. I'm really excited to have this discussion today. If this is your first Guild Quality Owner Series, welcome. This webinar will be a bit different from your average webinar. The format will be a panel discussion, which we hope will be highly interactive and informative, so that you can ask questions and tricks to use at your business. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you're joining us on the call today, just make sure that you're muted. That way we have good audio quality throughout the call, and that we'll be able to hear all of our panelists throughout the entire webinar. So again, if you could just mute your phone if you're in the audience, we would really appreciate that. Also, if you have any questions or comments during the discussion, feel free to email us, marketing@guildquality.com, or you can tweet your questions. Our handle is guildquality owner series, and we'll definitely be able to answer those questions for you. So today's discussion features a panel of industry-leading replacement contractors who will share how they've managed to build a customer-centric culture at their business. The discussion will be moderated by Michael Penley, who's the Director of Sales at AccuLynx. Michael came to AccuLynx after serving more than 10 years in sales management positions in the construction industry. At Home Depot Services, he ran the roofing, siding, windows division for all of Central Ohio, which included 14 stores. He then moved to Able Mr. Roof in Columbus, Ohio, one of the largest roofing companies in the United States. Sales, customer demonstration, and strategic partner teams. He and his team provide the customer voice to the AccuLynx development and design teams, helping to drive the software's function and evolution. Michael is going to go ahead and tee up the discussion on building a customer-centric culture, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the discussion portion. So, Michael, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So this is a very important call, like you said, not only to Guild Quality, but AccuLynx. Being customer-centric and having a culture that is customer-centric is part of the reason why most of our companies decide to use AccuLynx. When we talk about this, we're talking about how you get everyone in your company involved. You know, everyone says the customer is always right. When doing this and being a customer, the key is how do you get your employees engaged in the quality of service and focusing directly on the customer? How do you get true focus from your employees day in and day out? Because once you do that, we see time and time again with our customers that the business will grow. And so you have to sit there and say to yourself, culture is a way that you act and interact with your customers every day. The three gentlemen on this call are really great at this. We'll talk a little bit about them more later. But the part of the call is going to be how do you put this into your processes? What tools can you use? How do you talk to your people? How do you work with your people so that every day their focus is on culture, the culture's focus is on, and how you can really design an effective business process that really can help you grow. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over, and we will tell you more about the great panel we have here of successful contractors that really have been able to put this into their business.
Thanks to Michael. I'm going to go ahead and introduce all of our panelists for you guys today. Our first panelist is Philip Petrie. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Craftsman Restoration and Remodeling. Philip shares that he got a bit of a random start in the construction industry. He began in 2005 painting for a drywall and paint company and ended up taking over the company and growing it from $1 million to $5 million by the end of 2008. He was then introduced to insurance restoration in 2009, not knowing what a shingle was. He took the business from 0 to $12 million in just 24 months. He then began expanding Craftsman in 2011, which now has permanent locations in Lexington, Louisville, Columbus, Toledo, Minneapolis, and home base in Akron. He opened a full-service remodeling and acrylic bathroom remodeling company and developed a natural stone manufacturing company as well. Philip and the team at Craftsman have been Guild Quality members since 2012. Joe Hoffman, who is the CEO of Hoffman Weber Construction. Joe started off working for his stepdad doing vinyl siding installs throughout high school and college. He went on to form Hoffman Weber Construction with him in 2004. He shares that he accidentally discovered the hail restoration niche in 2005 when a client's home got hit by hail the day before it was scheduled to go up. Then, after the destruction caused by Hurricane Ike, he began following hailstorms and has been doing that ever since. He also began doing traditional retail sales again in Minnesota and has since expanded to Colorado with plans to open in Omaha later this year. The year he and John incorporated, they did $90,000 in revenue, and last year they did just over $12 million. Joe has been a member since 2011. Our final panelist is Dan Pfister, founder and president of Victory Restoration. Dan has directed his company in achieving exponential growth. His recent secret is a systems-based solution designed to achieve maximum growth. He is pragmatic and has accomplished success through hard work, innovation, dedication, integrity, and commitment to excellence. Dan has worked in the construction industry for over 12 years, involved in a variety of projects from the ground up, as well as rehabilitation of existing buildings. Dan has experience working as a general contractor and in the trades. So thank you so much to Philip, Joe, and Dan for joining us today. We're excited to hear the stories you guys have on how you've been able to successfully build a customer-centric culture at your business. So I'm going to go ahead. Just one more time, I want to note, if you guys do have any questions, make sure that you email those to marketing@guildquality.com, or you can also reach us on our Twitter handle, @guildquality, and using the hashtag #ownerseries. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn things back over to Michael, and we can begin the discussion portion of today's webinar. So Michael, you can go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you very much. As she said, this will be a very interesting call. Part of the gentleman on the phone, and just to kind of give some guidance of how this call will work. Everyone on this call knows each other well, so we may go a little bit on tangents, but the whole on making sure that we really convey how all three companies have been successful in being customer-centric. So we'll go ahead and start. The first question, company culture. How did it become a topic of interest across the industry for you, and what were some of the biggest myths, Philip, that you were discovered when trying to develop a company culture?
Well, first of all, I'd say that the biggest lessons that we've learned out there have been through the School of Hard Knocks. Most of what we've learned has happened because we have failed to do it when we should have. And so the biggest thing that I would say that we've learned is that company culture isn't developed out of intention or desire because we're good people or because we want to treat our customers the right way. It's not a generic concept that happens to come into place because of good intention. It only comes into existence by real execution. And so I think the biggest thing is to determine what aspects of your business, what aspects of your model are the key factors that are going to contribute to customer centricity. And if you can't determine those, put them in writing and then identify exactly how one can accomplish the execution of the idea through the practical aspects of the day-to-day interaction with customers and employees and how your incentive programs build a culture which is company-centric, or if they're just happening kind of generically, because generic customer centricity never happens because of good intention.
Perfect. Joe, what would you add to that?
Sorry,
Joe,
I
you
had
may
my phone
still
muted. Yep, I'm here. Sorry, I had my phone muted. Yeah, I guess I'd really just back them up on it's, I think it's made out to be some sort of a 10-step process to introduce a company culture, become more customer-centric when really it's difficult. It's full of gray areas and ambiguity, and I stole this from Philip, but it's something that you have to live, not so much do.
What about you, Dan?
Yeah, I think that the biggest myth that I've discovered is that it's not about leading with an expectation and expecting that your company culture is going to achieve this, but rather it has to become what you live and what you model. And so that's probably the largest thing, because just like Philip, when I desire and I have am well-intentioned, those things do not achieve culture. Living and modeling from the front and being in the trenches across the company, I feel is probably become some of our greatest successes. And oftentimes when I read books about culture, it's just so desirable and so much of an ideal that you don't just naturally get that. And everybody else has to see the way that you're living and catch that heartbeat too.
Very good. I wrote some stuff down here that we'll come back to. But Philip, you made some points here. You said you write them down.
I said what? I'm sorry.
You write down the key factors that help contribute to company culture, customer-centric?
Yeah. I try to, yes.
And you display that for your people?
Probably not as successful as we can. What I mean by write it down is more of tangibly designing the model itself and understand everything that goes into the model, including profitability and production schedules and purchasing. All those things play into the dynamic behind the company culture. And so if you can't identify, if you really want to be customer-centric, you have to identify who the customers are. I mean, that customers aren't just the customers. You've got internal customers, you've got external customers. And your customers are your vendor. They're your literal customers. They're also your sales reps. They're also your production teams. And if you don't have a game plan and you can't identify how are we going to relate to every aspect of the model itself that we've clearly defined, our mission, vision, values, and what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? And because a lot of times the problem, I think, happens where culture doesn't become customer-centric. A company can be somewhat customer-centric by caring about the customers. And so we say, well, we do the right thing. So if there's a warranty claim, we're going to settle it. If they have a complaint, we're going to deal with it. But the truth is that to develop a culture of customer centricity, it has to be focusing on the model itself and of all the individuals that relate to the business on a day-to-day basis. And so I think to do that, you have to clearly define what the mission of the company is, what the vision of the company is, and what the values of the company are. And then take that down on a granular level to the day-to-day types of problems that you're dealing with, and then identify clearly how do we operate on a day-to-day basis with our employees, with our vendors, with our subcontractors, with our sales reps, and with our customers, because then it gets onto a culture level rather than just a behavioral level.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to the next question. So the next question is, how does having a customer-centric culture impact profitability and success? Joe, let's start with you.
Was that going to me first?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it increases both. If you have a truly customer-centric culture, your customers are going to be happier, and at the end of the day, you're going to have a more positive, robust online presence. And when you have that positive online, robust presence, you're going to win more bids. It's just the way that it goes. The days of an upset customer telling their neighbors and their coworkers and their relatives that they weren't happy with you and not to hire you, those days are over. Now, if a person gets upset because you weren't focused on their satisfaction, they can go online and tell their story and just their side of the story to hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So, where on the flip side of that, if you really do focus in on them, they tell the good side of the story to everybody. On top of that, I know that we're able to recruit some really, really top-notch people because they see that we truly care about our customers. They see that reflected online, and they'll work for us even if the pay package or the benefits or whatever else aren't quite the same. They want to be a part of it.
That's very good. So Dan, would you agree that social media and where everyone's kind of connected and someone can post one thing online and it spreads to tens of thousands of people, that really, by you being customer-centric, it's kind of worked in a positive way for you and it's impacted your profitability?
Yeah, we're in of course, I mean, it just seems redundant, but we're in a time where everybody is just tapping into, Victory Restoration and their cell phone and seeing what the first search comes up or what BBC or Facebook or any of those networking sites have to say. And I know that whenever we can achieve and get the celebration of somebody being pleased with our professionalism and they're willing to go out of their way to advertise it, where we highlight that, especially I think even the old school approach of send a customer survey at the end and let that, if they're willing to send it back, let that stand for itself and be willing to share those with customers if they ask for things. But when it comes down to having a customer-centric culture and how does that impact our profitability and success, I really believe that you get what you celebrate. And for us, we make a part of our key result areas in this company. We tie it back to our mantra, which is service-based, solution-focused. And when we think about even when we say customer-centric, I mean ultimately I think that our customers are twofold. One, maybe it's the residential or commercial property owner, but our return customers are often the insurance agents and adjusters who we have an opportunity to make a really positive and deep impact with. And I think that when we go and can stand in this industry and earn a great reputation with those customers, the return customers being the agents and adjusters, I really think that it helps us with profitability and success because we earn favor meeting with the adjusters time and time again, and they actually, I think, can assure our customers of victories. It's a good company, they're local, they pay their taxes here, and I've seen that actually impact our profitability and success largely because it just helps to have a good reputation. So.
What about you, Philip?
I agree with Dan. I agree with both guys across the board. I think the impact of social media and all those things are really tangible. I love what Dan said about the reality of building relationships if you're in the insurance restoration industry, of focusing on building the relationships with the adjusters and the insurance companies. It really changes the game. I see a lot of insurance restoration companies out there that see the adjusters as the enemy, and that becomes really difficult to navigate through because they'll start seeing you the same way. I'd throw out there that as far as efficiencies and profitability, one of the big changing factors, the big dynamics behind customer centricity that impacts profitability in a lot of ways relates to efficiencies. And if the culture in a company is one of customer centricity, and at this point I'm talking purely about the customer itself, the customer themselves, but the trickle-down effect of the thought process behind the interaction with the end user, with the consumer, is really tangible because you go from trying to resolve an issue, a roofing issue or a gutter issue or damaged siding, to trying to engage the customer. And so when you have employees who are choosing to really truthfully engage the individual with whom they're interacting, instead of just resolve the problem, you want to engage the customer, because it's really difficult to resolve a problem without both sides being committed to resolving. And when those customers begin to really believe and experience the fact that you're primarily committed to them as an individual, you've shown that towards your employees. I find that the problems resolve themselves more effectively, and your AR issues decrease, your customer issues decrease, and problems get resolved more effectively, and that's you achieve higher levels of profitability because you've got increased efficiency.
Nice. I tell you, Philip, somebody likes your answer so well that they started playing music. It was
yeah, I know. I heard that. It was very hard to focus.
I tell you, you said something down I thought was great. You get what you celebrate. I thought that was really something that you could put down almost in your company, and it's a great thing to always think about, because if you celebrate when someone is customer-centric and they've really given great service, it becomes repeatable because other people in your company always like to be acknowledged. So that was a great line there, Dan. So next question we talk about is, it's good and all to say that you want to make it a focus for your company. You're going to define everything. You're going to make it, your mission and your value, and you're going to go all the way down to granular. So I'll bring this up to you. How do you know? How do you know for sure? How can you give advice for everyone else on this call that you are being successful in what you've measured?
Mm-hmm.
Philip?
Who was? Oh, was that to me? I'm sorry. I think you can gauge it by the environment that you work in. If you're coming into the office every day dealing with angry people, whether that's your customers or your employees or your vendors, you can tell right off the bat how is the company performing, because either you're truly customer-centric or you're not. And if you are, then you'll experience a higher level of peace, I'd say, within the organization, higher level of relationship. And, the tangible way, one of the turning points for us, I'm not trying to throw an advertisement out there, but one of the tangible ways, turning points for us was with Guild Quality, when we all of a sudden started seeing things from a different perspective than what we were hearing inside of the office. I don't get out in the field a whole lot, as much as I'd like. And so what it gave me the opportunity as a manager to do was to be able to hear the perspective from the field, what's really happening on the ground. And so you can get direct feedback, and then you can gauge by the general environment within which you work.
Exactly. If everyone, I know we mentioned earlier, maybe the message was said, if you are not one of the speakers, and if you are one of the speakers not talking, if you could put it on mute, it will help with everyone else being able to hear a little bit better. I appreciate it, whoever just put it on mute, so that helps us out. Thank you. All right, Joe, you're up the bat for the customer service is a priority. How do you ensure that for your company?
We said about efficiency. We track contract signing to start to completion to close, and we can really gauge at that how well we're doing on the job. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to Guild Quality as far as how I know how my company's doing out there. And I personally look at every single Guild Quality survey that comes through, and I personally reach out to a lot of clients and to every person that touches or got mentioned in that survey, and to let them know, hey, attaboy, good job, or if something needs to be worked on, shape up or ship out. And so I really rely on the surveys a lot.
Dan, what about you?
Yeah, thinking of how to boil this down, because I have a lot to say about it. I think that I could boil it down to this. It's determining in any circumstance if our way to handle a situation is proactive or reactive. And so then, if I'm doing reviews of the play of when we all can say it this way, when something falls through the cracks, it's not a matter of if something's going to fall through the cracks, it's just why. And so did we have a proactive response to this or reactive? I think that's a good measure for me to see if this is customer service is something that's a priority for company-wide. Ways that I also would recommend, I guess, tuning into this is doing ride-alongs with the team out in the field and just shutting up and just watching and listening and writing down in a really, I think if I could do that with 5-10 guys and just boil down what seems to be a common theme with the team, it helps me determine what the culture is for our sales force. Listening, just like kind of being a fly to the back office, talking to customers and third-party vendors, just trying to observe what does it seem like is the main point of their conversation? Does it boil back down to service-based and then solution-focused, or are they just trying to get through, get the solution, get the result, and they're abandoning what I be to serve people, whether it's our direct customer or our return customers of the insurance carriers or third parties or other people. So I would say that's kind of ways that I would know.
Very good. All right, let's move on to the next question. Dan, we'll start with you. What were the initial steps you took as a business to develop a customer-centric culture? How did you learn what your customers valued, what they were looking for in your company, and how did you define your business goals based upon those values?
That's great. I started off when in a couple of different ways at the same time, but I have a business coach I've met with for a few years, and I've let him call, as an independent person, customers who were residential and commercial property owners, subcontractors, other third parties, and also interview all of our team and let just a broad panel of questions be answered so we could get some good data. I lined that up against what was already a strategic plan for the company, but then I boiled it down to key result areas, which when I boiled down to key result areas, I scorecard that stuff. I shine the light on those areas where I really want to kind of drill down our focuses, where I think it's going to be of the most benefit to help improve us and steer our focus. Because, and again, to me, shining a light or using a scorecard is getting what you celebrate. So scorecards are positive and uplifting, but they're also, if we don't adhere to those categories and do well, then nobody feels good about it. So it's all how we go and manage from there. But at least company-wide, people know what we're focused on.
Very good. And you, Joe?
I didn't have a business coach, but I did just start focusing in on where we were at. The first thing I did after I had a few negative interactions with clients that really kind of surprised me. It was about 4 years back, and I just started drilling into how our customers really felt. And then once I figured out where our weak points were in our customer service and our strong points, I started celebrating the strong points and working with the team on the weak ones.
That's great. Philip?
Well, I'll say that we had lots of good intentions early on. It really wasn't until Guild Quality that we were able to really identify how we were performing. It was really the first mechanism that we had to give us tangible, real information. Prior to that, I think we were able to gauge it based on the types of relationships that we were building. It was very, our key initial step was determining who is our customer and making a fundamental decision that our customers were everyone that we were relating to, including employees. And I think that had an impact on the culture as a whole, because there weren't exceptions to the way that we treated people, to the best of our ability at least. And so because we consistently at least attempted to treat people in the manner that we wanted and the manner that we wanted to be treated, I think that kind of built a foundation for a company culture. But it really wasn't until Guild Quality that we were able to really identify concretely where our weaknesses were.
Very good. Let's go to the next question. It's kind of a long one here. And so I'm going to kind of break it up. So how have you and your management team reinforced the quality and customer service policies and processes that align for your culture, Joe?
We use AccuLinks for that. AccuLinks does a phenomenal job at tracking where a project is, and so we can really dive in before the end and figure out what's going wrong and make sure that our projects are on cue. Because at the end of the day, that's, I think, what most customers want is good communication, and they want their job done right and fast. So, and then at the end, after the job's done, we get the Guild Quality through, and a lot of our promotions and raises and giving people more responsibility or accolades, that sort of thing, are based on the Guild Quality reviews. I think Dan mentioned scorecards earlier. We use those Guild Quality scorecards quite a bit.
Yeah, and Joe, when you first looked at moving to... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I was done.
I was going to say, when you first looked at doing Guild Quality, was there anyone in your company or some people that used to the old culture that were fearful or didn't believe it would work as well as it? And how did you change their mind or get them around to come to the better way that is with the Guild Quality survey?
Yeah, there were more than a few people that were a little hesitant about it, and I think most of those people that were hesitant, it's because they weren't providing the greatest service, and they were pretty good at burying it. And now they saw this new program, and they knew they weren't going to be able to bury it anymore. Most of those people actually improved. We had to part ways with a few, But what actually really surprised me about it is how many people in my company liked it and appreciated it and were looking forward to getting recognized for stuff that they were already doing.
It's great when you get those fives. And let me ask you this. There's a question on here that's very interesting, so I'll stay with you on this, Joe. How do you convey this focus to your subcontractors?
Well, it's a lot harder, obviously, because you're not just getting to the subcontractors, but you're getting to the subcontractors' employees. So, and that's, I think that our salesmen and our project managers spend a lot of time on the jobs, and just by showing those subcontractors what they need to do and what we care about, instead of pencil whipping them, we do the same thing with the employees. We raise them up and give them praise or penalties based on the things that are going to affect our customers. And before too long, it doesn't take too long to weed out the bad ones, and the good ones love working for us because they know that we care about the same things they care about.
Yeah, so let's start back up, and Philip, we'll go with you. How do you reinforce the quality and customer service policy and processes with your team?
Well, as far as the processes, I'll say it was utter chaos until actually AccuLynx. AccuLynx was the real turning point for us. It was one of the most difficult things we've ever had to do. You asked the question, how did you enforce it? I'm more of a carrot guy than a stick guy, but unfortunately with AccuLynx, it took a lot of sticks. AccuLynx was a hard transition for the staff, but the accountability that it brought to the table was absolutely unbelievable. And we tried a lot of processes, a lot of systems before that. And so having the capacity to really hold people accountable to their performance equated directly to their capacity or to their competency and desire to serve the customer, because it matters when you do things and it matters when you drop balls. So AccuLynx gave us the system to be able to track how well we were performing. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, Guild Quality was, for us has been kind of the icing on the cake to help us really identify, not just from our perspective how we're doing, but from their perspective.
Yeah, and the same question to you about the subcontractor. I think it's interesting. That's like the final piece of the puzzle. How do you get this message and this focus to your subcontractors?
Well, I'll tell you how I have done it and then how I'm moving to try to do it. How I have done it in the past has been that I will, when I get those surveys back, which is often, a reasonably long period of time, not because of them, but because we tend to submit all of our names every 2 weeks or every month. So there's a delay between the time that they do the roof and the time that we get the feedback. But what I'll do is, if it's extremely positive or negative, there are lots of people that'll give 3s and 4s but not submit a review, so they're not a stark raving fan. But the people that I identify that are stark raving fans or as seriously unhappy customers, I take the time, as much as I intend to do more than I do, but I really try and take the time to communicate over the phone with my subcontractors so that they know exactly what's happening and they hear about it. In a perfect world, I think, if you were running things really, really efficiently, it'd be a really nice thing to send the Guild Quality Survey with their check for the job so that they get to see it. But even knowing that the customer is going to be surveyed about their performance has been a real incentive for the crews. I've seen a massive difference in the quality of the customer experience since Guild Quality, purely because I'm relaying that information. Even if it's just verbal, the awareness that it's happening has had a huge impact. Just announcing it at and during roofer meetings that I hold, twice a year maybe, bring all the subcontractors in and make them aware of it. They all get a little nervous, but then I try and make the phone calls, the first phone calls, really good ones. So I try and, celebrate, as Dan would say, with them, their good performance so that I'm not always focusing on the bad.
Very good. All right. So Dan, what about you in terms of customer service policies in your management team?
Yeah, love this question. It's really challenging. I I think I got a couple quick responses to it. Number one conviction is that I don't just hire people, and as some people could say, I don't just try and get meat in the seat for this company, but ultimately we must train and equip the team and equip them with the tools to do their job, and that happens, across the company, regardless of position. And so a part of that effort was the recognition of we need a standard in which we train from and how we go and do the equipping so that people onboard effectively and they ultimately hear the same message. And so on one side of it is, internally at Victory, we created, the training arm for our company called Victory University. And so we train our employees and also our subcontractors, which taps on the second half of the question. But I really believe that a way that that this has really played out is that, we say this, it's not about leading with expectations, because ultimately if I was to go and expect we have an awesome culture, then we would just have an awesome culture, for everybody. But it's more about people respecting what you inspect. So ultimately, the inspect piece happens with scorecards and periodic reviews. And I love to be a very active owner-operator in this company because, one, I really value what we do. I believe in the products and services that we offer. I truly believe that it impacts, our customers. And, I think that in my best of efforts, it's only really started to become a culture since I was able to level set and train and equip the company from the front with Victory University. And so the second half of the question, how do we go and get new employees or subcontractors, to get on board with this? And I mean, I train subcontractors. I will sit down and paint the vision of service-based, solution-focused, and say that it's not just, about our sales model here. It's not that we're just a sales company. It's not just about our operating model and that we have a good business model and we have a strategic plan. But, your slice of the pie, Mr. and Mrs. Subcontractor, is that you're part of our service model. And a way for us to achieve cohesive service delivery, which is a very critical thing that we measure, we paint that picture and basically, give a vision for what that could look like. And then we follow up. It looks like active daily phone calls to crews that are active in the field doing projects, asking, drill down questions, and then inspecting what they do. So, people respect what you inspect, and that's been a big part of it.
Yeah, and I will tell you from a former contractor, one thing is, the middle part of the question says, how did you experience employees that were clinging to old culture? And in my company, it was interesting how the salespeople were a little nervous at first, but once they started getting back all the positive reviews and they realized how great the service was, it made them more confident in the company they were selling for. And then when they see great service in terms of what they're doing, they knew they were proud of the work they were doing. It was a third-party recognition that they were able to see, and then they were able to use it in the sales process in the future. So really using build quality for the most people, once they started using it, it wasn't a bad thing that we were shining light on our service. We were giving great service. And so anyone that was clinging to the old culture quickly turned around because of how much it helped them, and it was because of the positive service we were already giving. So it's a great tool to use to help shine a light on that service. So let's move on to the next question. As you can tell, I'm not driving this thing, sorry. How have you successfully empowered your team members to be the stewards of your company culture when you're not around? As you guys know, you travel a lot and everything. So how do you ensure that? And obviously you use software. So what software do you use or services to help safeguard any drop-offs or forgotten tasks? So we'll go right back to you, Dan, and ask you that question.
Yeah, that's awesome. To quickly answer the question, software, the integration with AccuLinks has been imperative, and Michael, I'm very thankful that AccuLinks brought on a task manager earlier this year. That has been a phenomenal help to us because, everybody says we're going to do something, but when we can actually have some tracking behind that, that's helped. But I think that something, and I'm just looking at the question, how have you successfully empowered your team members to be stewards of the company? I in part believe that this happens at the time of the hire. And the best time to fire somebody, and I've heard this said, and I agree with it, the best time to fire somebody is before you hire them. And so I have a very, specific couple of things that I look at when I'm making my hires, and that's one, and it goes in this order. It goes number one, character, number two, chemistry, and if I feel like the chemistry is good for them to be a part of this culture, and then three, their competence. And I think that lastly, I believe in competence because I can take somebody from another industry who hasn't directly done this job and function, but if they're teachable and trainable and willing to have, demonstrate a good work ethic, I think that, I could probably successfully onboard just about anybody if they've got the right core, but at least those first two items. And so really it boils down to we train, we inspect, and then we celebrate and kind of, have that head and shoulders thing, rinse and repeat.
Very good. I was writing down all of the lines here. Very good. So, Philip, what about you?
That was really good, Dan.
Thanks, Philip.
I think, on our end, as far as empowering the team members, I think some of that has just been the way that we interact with our with our employees and our team members, and that they just want to do it. And so that's really good, and that had to do with what I've referred to several times as far as internal and external customers, and that my responsibility is to steward my relationship with the employees, and that's the focus of that isn't primarily how it's going to impact the business, but that's just a core value. But then the biggest tool was AccuLinks, to be able to whether it's on a beach in Mexico or a trip to Europe, to be able to really clearly see what's happening. And I'll take a screenshot of all the phases in AccuLinks, and I'll see how many phases are submitted for approval, and then what my job progress screen in AccuLinks looks like, and I'll be able to see where the files are sitting and what the aging is. And everybody understands what their responsibilities are, and there are cut and dry expectations about how long files can sit where without a cut and dry explanation. And to be able to take that screenshot and then 2 days later come back to it and see, has it been updated, has it changed, and then be able to specifically hold someone accountable. You don't have to do it. I mean, I do it with every single job to the best of my ability, but you don't have to do it with every job. It literally, people are aware that there are eyes on it, and in a funny way, yes, they're accountable, but it actually empowers them. They feel a sense of accomplishment as they move files through the process. And there's also a sense of accomplishment because they know someone is looking. Therefore, somebody values what they're producing and what they're doing. And for us, on the Guild quality side, which is the other primary tool that we use, I found that it does empower. It was not a difficult thing to put into play. People look forward to getting the feedback from it, and they don't mind if it's bad because it's a third party. There's no conflict. There's no anger. It's just literally, here's what the customer's perception was. Let's discuss how that perception was created. And so the combination of those two things combined with the intent and the foundation, the building blocks of the company helped empower them to really care for every aspect of the business. I'm seeing here dropped handoffs and forgotten tasks. That was our middle name before AccuLinks. We dropped every ball and we forgot about that.
And I don't know if you need me.
What's that?
I had a little bit of hiccup there. What was that last part, Philip?
Prior to the combo between AccuLinks and Guild Quality, drop balls were our middle name. That's what people felt cared for, but they also knew we dropped balls right and left and we forgot about tasks right and left. So implementing systems to be able to hold people accountable is not a difficult thing for a company to do as far as the employee's perception. It's one that builds company culture and customer centricity.
Perfect. Yeah, I had a little hiccup there for a second, so I wanted to make sure everyone else got that because I didn't know if everyone else dropped for a second like I did. And finally, Joe.
Hello?
Joe, we're hearing you.
Oh, yeah, you're cutting out. Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, so what software and services are you using to help safeguard against drop handoffs and forgot tasks?
AccuLynx. Yeah, we use AccuLynx all the way. And AccuLynx, I think Philip said it really well. More than holding them accountable, it empowers them to not make those mistakes that are so easy to make. So we use AccuLynx to do that. And then as far as the people, they know, we hire them, we set the clear expectations right from the start. We give it to them, and then we trust them to do their job well and encourage them to make those tough decisions, and then back it up on the back end with, encouraging them and praising everything else when they do make the tough decision that might cost the company more money on that job, but it's what it takes to get it done right and make the customer happy.
Yeah, you mentioned something there. I want to go a little step further in. Do you feel that part of what helped you build a customer-centric culture is kind of giving your people the freedom and empowered them to make the right decision without fear of you being mad at them or maybe them making that first initial mistake?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very blessed to have a really good team of people, and with AccuLynx, they make less mistakes on their own, and they've known, because I've proven it to them over and over and over throughout the years, that if they make the wrong choice, they're not going to be penalized for it. We're just going to figure out why it happened and then work as a team to get it resolved. And if it costs the company a little bit more money, if it costs maybe a little bit of commission or whatever it takes, as long as our customer's satisfied in the end and we acknowledge the problem up front, then we're going to move on as a stronger company.
Awesome. Let's go on to the next question. The next question, what is the process like for measuring your performance on jobs and whether your culture standards were upheld? I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but if you want to elaborate any more, Dan, on some of how do you measure it? And because it goes more into, I think, what you said at the very beginning, Philip, about the details. What are the key triggers? What are the things you're looking for? They may be in AccuLynx, maybe in the guild quality. They may be somewhere else. What are some of the key performance indicators? What are the triggers you're looking for to say, hey, this job is going right, it's right on the right track, or it maybe is going off the rails? So, Dan, that first to you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think that, objectively we would say, what does it take to get from stale to nail? And we recognize that variance is the killer of successful processes. So how do we go and remove any snags and snafus that can arise? So how do we eliminate the variance? So our process for measuring the performance on this front is our scorecards, because it hits the tangibles. It hits what we can measure. The other half of it comes into business, just operating a strong business. And I would say that quality is for me to be in my business and discerning what's going on and basically trying to have a pulse of the intangibles. But, and I think that those intangibles often, though, are the sense and the feeling of what the culture is saying and doing. And the only way that I know to be in touch with that is to be in my business.
Very good. What about you, Philip?
So I'm going to be a little bit of a broken record, I guess, here, but as far as managing the expectations and identifying the performance, for me, there are two aspects of it. Actually, three. One is overall customer satisfaction. We've already determined how we can figure that one out. But then there's also, phases of production that matter a ton. And so for me to be able to get a snapshot of exactly what's happening, again, not unfortunately, but I'm not trying to be a broken record, but the impact of AccuLynx to be able to see exactly what's happening and when and hold people accountable to it so we can measure their real performance. And the challenge there that I can see is when somebody first adopts an AccuLynx or another software that gives them a bird's eye view, the assumption is I can go off of the data alone. But the data alone doesn't really tell you the story because we all know the level of complexity that goes into many projects. And so there are variables. There are things that happen. And so it takes an owner who really cares about the individual project and the individual customer enough to identify, okay, well, I'm going to look and see why. And when the employees are trained thoroughly to input information, it makes it really efficient and effective to be able to just see, all right, well, I understand insurance company hasn't released final depreciation because of X, Y, Z issue. Now there's no conflict, there are no questions. I can really tangibly monitor the performance and then couple that with the capacity to evaluate customer satisfaction, and you get a really powerful combo. You still there, Michael?
Philip, I like your response. I heard all that.
Joe, what do you think about that, buddy?
I think we may have lost Michael here for a second. So what I'll do is we'll go ahead and finish up the last question, and I'll just go ahead and take over. So for each of you guys, and we'll just kind of maybe just give a sentence or two, any lessons learned or any kind of final pieces of advice that you would want to share with business owners who are just now kind of, starting to implement a customer-centric culture within their companies. And Dan, we'll go ahead and start with you if you just want to give us a sentence or two.
Yeah. A major impact in my life has been hiring a personal business coach so that I get driven hard because I like to go hard, but I also find many rabbit holes and tangents to go down. So to keep myself on, the wheels on the track, that's been a big part of it, and I think been able to experience. And then also, I cling to those who've gone before me, and what I mean by that is that if there's a seasoned, CEO or chief of operations or anybody, any person who, I would say is bald and got gray hair, I'm probably going to try and call and get as much time with, if they've been successful in business, and hopefully learn from some of their greatest pitfalls and try and, figure out the way that would relate to me in this current business venture and the couple of businesses that I'm currently involved in, so that we could go and just be on the top of our game, because it's not just about being convenient for myself. It's about being the best that we can be as an organization so that we can consistently deliver on what we say we want to our customers. And that again, is the anthem of service-based, solution-focused.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. And Philip, what about you? What's be your last lessons learned piece of advice for everyone here on the call?
Well, I think I agree with Dan. First of all, the relational dynamic behind trying to learn to run a business has been enormous. I've been involved with an organization called the UASRC, which is built, invested in the relationships initially. Those relationships, like Dan was talking about, the accountability and the vision and the direction have been enormous. I think the second one is the reality of the devil being in the details, that when you lose track of the details, you will quickly lose track of your business. We've suffered drastically because of our lack of attention to the details. And the third correlates directly with that, because the only way we've been able to identify the details that are important have been through the systems and investing in the systems. I remember the first time I sat down with the guys from AccuLynx, and I thought that was really expensive. Now I tell them, I can't believe you charge so little. You should charge 5 times that, and I think the same thing with Guild Quality. the investments are minimal compared to the return if you invest in the right things. And it's just important to, seek the right guidance and identify who's done what you want to do, and then follow in the footsteps. Don't try and reinvent the wheel every time. And so investing in the systems, investing in the relationships has been key for me in my personal development and our company.
Great. That's awesome, Philip. And then, Joe, what about you? Do you have any final words?
Yeah, I would say the best way to get started is to figure out where you're at right now. You have to find out how you're doing, how customer-centric your organization is, and how satisfied your customers are right now. And good, bad, or ugly doesn't really matter. Just have to figure out why it's there, and so that you can keep doing the good things and keep pushing forward. But the first step is you can't get to where you're going without knowing where you are currently.
Yeah, that's very true. We want to go ahead and thank you guys so much for all of the great insights that you guys have given us throughout all these questions. You guys have really provided a lot of great business, tips and tricks that I feel like a lot of our audience members are going to be able to use. So thank you so much for that. We had a few questions. We have maybe a time for one or two more questions that came in. So I'd like to go ahead and just ask the first one, and this one probably is going to be directed at Dan. I know you kind of mentioned how you kind of start this customer-centric culture in the hiring process. So do you have any kind of specific, questions that you ask during the interview that kind of help you identify candidates that are going to be a good fit for your culture?
No, if there's one area that I have a lot of variance in what I do, it's my hiring, and I do try and have other people pre-screen individuals and ask a very objective question set, and I have those printed out, and a lot of it's to kind of honor being a fair company for hiring. But if somebody gets in the room with me, it's not going to be a 45-minute interview. I'm going to talk for 2 to 3 hours with you, and all I can really say is that I kind of trust my instinct with it, and then I always at least have hires or new hires who are interviewing with us go through 2 and hopefully three rounds of interviewing to let other people engage. And also I try and always change the dynamic in which the person's interviewing in. So change the room in the office that we're meeting in, change the number of people in the interview. I'd like to have at least 2 to 3 people in an interview too, because in this line of work, especially for our sales team, that's similar to what people experience, a 2-on-1, 3-on-1 experience when they're meeting with customers in the home. And some people may be good, really, really good 1-to-1, but when it's 2-on-1, 3-on-1, how are they going to respond versus react? And kind of where are their weak spots going to be, so that we can gauge if we think that we can train to that and help them overcome some of those small hurdles,
Yeah, that's definitely really great advice, and kind of simulating what a sales call might be like is definitely a great way to kind of see how they're going to handle themselves. So Philip or Joe or even Michael, do you guys have anything you wanted to add there?
I don't have anything better than Dan's.
Yeah, he's
I like you, Philip.
To follow.
All right, cool. So we'll just have time for one more question. So I'll kind of open this up to anybody, that kind of does this with their business processes. Are any of you guys using social media for customer service, or are you using more of just kind of a way to connect with your customers?
I see social media more as a lead gen tool and a branding tool than evaluating the performance of a company.
Mm-hmm. I'll tap in on that. I agree with that. I think that if we look at the numbers of our incoming volumes of customers, like to generate new projects, it is certainly less than 5% of our business volume comes from any and all forms of social media. But just like the BDB type of thing, you got to do it. And so I want people to find us if they're interested in probing about our company, and their sweet spot's Facebook, and they want to find us there. That's great. We're there. We'll be there for them. But more than anything, I see Facebook as a directionary tool, hopefully back to our website, so that people can then engage and interact with us in those ways.
All right, awesome, guys. Thank you so much for your feedback there, and I think that's probably all the time we're going to have for questions. So I'll turn it back over to you, Michael, if you want to say a few last words, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah, no problem. First, I want to thank everyone that was on the call. I'm sorry, my headset decided not to work anymore, so I had to call in a different way. I really appreciate everyone, Dan, Philip, and Joe. You know, one thing I want to say a little bit about Guild Quality. When I was a contractor, we used it. And if you have a desire, if you don't use it now and you have a desire to know more of what your customers are truly thinking about your service, you will be shocked at how well Guild Quality gets surveys filled out. The other guys may not have mentioned it, but it is amazing how much difference it makes to have a third-party company that knows they're doing, like Guild Quality, to truly ask your customers what they think of your service. And they get the truth out of your customers as well. So it's really great. There's also a question I want to put on here, too. If anybody has any questions about what AccuLinks can do for them and what we do, it is a business management software. It really puts everyone together. It's really great with messaging. They talk about it here, keep everyone on the same track. It tracks the job from start to finish. Your people in the field can communicate easily. They can upload photos. They can make comments. So you really, when people in the construction industry, people are not in the office. And so what AccuLinks does is kind of lets everyone stay connected in one place by being with each other. So by using AccuLinks, it's really great to ensure that you are giving great service because you will know at all times what everybody is doing. So that was a question. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
So I'll tell you right now, I went through every single existing software that I could possibly find before I settled with AccuLinks. In fact, I tried several of them. And I also tried to do customer service calls in-house. I tried to get a phone room from one of my friends' companies to call to do customer satisfaction surveys because it all seemed a little bit expensive, which failed dramatically. And I'll tell you right now, if you get off this call and don't contact both companies, all you'll do is spin your wheels and try and find somebody else who can do it, and the services are unparalleled. And I don't believe there's anybody in the industry that I've tried for either service that is anything as any comparable value to both of these organizations. So you got to do it.
Well, thanks so much for those kind words, and thank you guys all for participating, all of our panelists, Michael for moderating, and for everybody else that joined the call in the audience. We really appreciate your time. We hope you were able to learn a lot from the discussion and that you gained a few takeaways that you can kind of use back at your business. So just to let everybody know, the webinar was recorded, so we'll be sending that out to everybody once it's available. If you have any more questions or want any more information on Guild Quality or AccuLinks, we have both websites here on the slide. You can visit Guild Quality at guildquality.com or AccuLinks at acculinks.com. So we hope you guys all have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.